In the dim glow of an empty editing suite at Warner Brothers Studios, time seemed to stand still. The ancient wall clock read 3:17 a.m., its gentle ticking echoing through the deserted hallway. Marcus Chen's trembling fingers hovered over the playback. Controls. His janitor's uniform still damp from mopping the executive floor. On the screen before him, his grandmother's weathered face filled the frame. A story of sacrifice captured through a lens he'd salvaged from the studio's trash. The door creaked behind him. Marcus's heart stopped. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the emergency lights, was a figure he'd only seen in movies and on posters, Clint Eastwood himself. Their eyes met in the reflection of the editing monitor. What happened next would change not only Marcus's life but would remind Hollywood what true storytelling was all about. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, what would you do if you were in Marcus's shoes at that moment? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart through the labyrinthine corridors of Warner Brothers Studios. It was 11:47 p.m., the time when the bustling movie empire transformed into a different world. His world. The night shift belonged to the invisible workforce, those who polished the dreams others would build upon tomorrow. Marcus adjusted his name tag, a small plastic rectangle that reduced his existence to M. Chen, maintenance. At 23, he wasn't just the youngest member of the night cleaning crew, he was perhaps the only one who saw these empty hallways as anything more than a paycheck. To him, every corner of this studio held the whispers of cinema history. "Hey, movie man," David Park's cheerful voice echoed from the break room. "Got another masterpiece hiding in that cart of yours?" The older janitor's eyes twinkled with knowing amusement. At 52, David had been working these halls for 15 years, ever since his own Hollywood dreams crashed into the reality of supporting 3 kids through college. Marcus smiled, patting the hidden compartment he'd built into his cart. Inside lay his precious cargo, a restored Panasonic AG DVX-100B camera he'd rescued from a dumpster 3 months ago, along with a handful of memory cards and a laptop held together with hope and electrical tape. "Just some test footage," Marcus replied, but his voice betrayed his excitement. "Remember my grandmother's story I told you about? I finally got the opening sequence right." David leaned against the doorframe, his own cart temporarily forgotten. "The one about her escape from mainland China? Kid, you've been working on that for months. When are you going to let me see it?" Marcus's eyes darted to the clock. "Maybe tonight, if we finish early. I've got some editing to do in Suite B." "Suite B?" David whistled low. "Marcus, that's executive territory. Tom's been extra vigilant since those props went missing last month." Tom Wheeler, head of security, had become the bane of Marcus's existence. A former military man who approached studio security with the gravity of national defense, Wheeler had nearly caught Marcus twice during his after-hours filming sessions. "I'll be careful," Marcus promised. "Besides, all the other editing rooms have been booked for that new superhero project." David shook his head but smiled. "Just like your mother, aren't you? Lisa would be proud, seeing you chase her dream." The mention of his mother sent a familiar ache through Marcus's chest. Lisa Chen had been a documentary filmmaker, capturing stories of immigrant communities until cancer took her when Marcus was 12. Her old camera, now broken beyond repair, still sat on his bedroom shelf like a sacred relic. "Grandmother's getting worse," Marcus said quietly, checking the corridor was empty. "The doctors say her memory's fading faster now. I need to finish this film while she can still see it, still remember her own story." David squeezed his shoulder. "Then you better get moving. I'll cover the executive washrooms for you tonight." Marcus worked with practiced efficiency, his movements economical and precise. Each floor had its rhythm: vacuum the offices, empty the trash, disinfect the surfaces. But unlike his colleagues, Marcus saw every task as an opportunity to study. He memorized the way light fell through the windows at night, how sound traveled through different spaces, which angles would work best for the scenes he planned to shoot. In the daytime, these halls hosted Oscar winners and industry titans. At night, They became Marcus's film school. He'd learned more from eavesdropping on directors' meetings through air vents and studying discarded storyboards than he ever could have afforded to learn in film school. His phone vibrated, a text from his grandmother's caregiver. "She had a good day. Asked for you twice. Don't work too hard." Attached was a photo of Chen sitting in her favorite chair, her once sharp eyes slightly unfocused but still warm. Marcus touched the screen gently. His grandmother had raised him after his mother's death, working 3 jobs to keep them afloat. She'd never complained, never mentioned the life she'd left behind in China, until Marcus found her old photographs hidden in a shoebox. That discovery had sparked the idea for his current project. By 2 a.m., Marcus had finished his assigned floors and helped David with his section. The studio lay silent, security cameras blinking their red eyes at regular intervals. Marcus knew their blind spots by heart now, the result of weeks of careful observation and timing his movements. Suite B was the crown jewel of the editing facilities, reserved for A-list directors and top executives. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he used his maintenance key to enter. The equipment here cost more than he'd make in 10 years of cleaning floors. He set up his laptop carefully, connecting it to the suite's advanced monitoring system. His grandmother's face filled the screen, younger in the opening sequence, filmed with actors he'd found through community theater. He'd used every trick he knew to match the footage with old photographs, creating a seamless blend of past and present. The story unfolded in careful layers, a young woman in 1960s China, choosing between family duty and personal freedom. Her dangerous journey across borders, the years of separation from her children, the price paid for a better life. It was his grandmother's story, but it was also the story of countless others who had left everything behind for a chance at something more. Marcus was so absorbed in his editing that he didn't notice the first warning sign, the subtle change in the hallway's lighting pattern that meant someone was approaching. He didn't hear the measured footsteps that had sent other late-night adventurers scrambling for cover. What he did hear, finally, was the door opening behind him. And in that moment, as he turned to face whatever consequence awaited, Marcus Chen's carefully constructed world of secret filmmaking and midnight dreams began to unravel. But fate, like any good screenplay, sometimes has a way of subverting expectations. Because the figure standing in the doorway wasn't Tom Wheeler with his security team. It wasn't even one of the regular executives doing a late-night check. The man who stood there, his distinctive silhouette unmistakable, even in the dim light, was Clint Eastwood himself. And he was staring not at Marcus but at the footage playing on the screen, at the story of an old woman's courage, told by her grandson, with nothing but salvaged equipment and an abundance of heart. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Marcus's mind raced through every possible scenario. Being fired, being arrested, being banned from the industry he'd dreamed of joining since childhood. But what happened next would change not just his future, but the very way stories would be told in Hollywood. The legendary director took one step into the room, his eyes never leaving the screen where Chen's story continued to play. And then, in that gravelly voice known to millions, he said something that would echo in Marcus's memory forever. "Kid, I think you better start from the beginning." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "Mr. Eastwood, I can explain." "That's what I'm counting on," Eastwood replied, pulling up one of the expensive editing chairs. He settled into it with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent decades in rooms just like this. "But first, let's watch what you got." Marcus's hands shook as he restarted the footage. The opening scene filled the professional-grade monitor. A young woman standing at a window in 1960s Shanghai, watching boats drift along the Huangpu River. The camera moved slowly, deliberately, catching the play of morning light across her face, a technique Marcus had practiced for weeks with his salvaged equipment. "Your grandmother?" Eastwood asked, nodding toward the screen. "An actress from local theater," Marcus explained, finding his voice. "But yes, it's based on my grandmother's story. That's her in the later scenes." The narrative continued, showing the young woman secretly selling family heirlooms to fund her escape. Marcus had filmed these scenes in Chinatown after hours, using careful angles to hide modern storefronts. The props were borrowed from his grandmother's friends, authentic pieces that carried their own histories. The camera work is steady, Eastwood observed. Old school, no fancy tricks. I believe the story should tell itself, Marcus ventured, then added quickly, I learned that from watching your film, sir, especially Letters from Iwo Jima. A slight smile crossed Eastwood's face. Good eye. But what I want to know is how a janitor got his hands on an AG DVX-100B and taught himself to shoot like this. Marcus glanced at his cleaning cart, still visible through the open door. I find things, equipment people throw away. I fix what I can, learn from maintenance manuals, watch tutorials online. The camera was in the dumpster behind Studio 4. And the editing suite? This isn't exactly public access. I clean it every night, Marcus admitted. I know I shouldn't be using the equipment, but I've been careful. I never touch any project files, never interfere with scheduled sessions. I needed proper monitors to check the color grading. My laptop screen isn't accurate enough. Eastwood's attention returned to the footage, where the scene had shifted to Mei Lin's arrival in America. The contrast between the staged historical sequences and the documentary-style interviews with his grandmother was stark, but intentional. How long? Eastwood asked. Sir? How long have you been working here, sneaking in shots between cleaning floors? 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. Marcus answered without hesitation. I took the job right after grandmother's diagnosis. The benefits help with her medical bills. The legendary director nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. And this story, why this one? Marcus straightened in his chair, passion overtaking his fear. Because it's disappearing. My grandmother's generation, they carried these incredible stories inside them, but they're fading away. Every day she forgets a little more. Soon, all these histories, these journeys that shaped America, they'll be gone. I thought if I could just capture one story, tell it right, you could preserve something important, Eastwood finished. He stood up and Marcus's heart sank, expecting the worst. But instead of calling security, Eastwood walked to the editing console, examining Marcus's makeshift connections to the professional system. You've got raw talent, kid. But talent without opportunity is like a gun without bullets. He turned to face Marcus. What if I told you I've been looking for fresh perspectives for a project? Something about the immigrant experience, the real stories, not the Hollywood version. Marcus stared, unable to process what he was hearing. I don't understand. My office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring your grandmother's full story, everything you've shot so far. Eastwood headed for the door, then paused. And Marcus? Use the front entrance this time. I'll tell security to expect you. After Eastwood left, Marcus sat in the expensive chair, his universe tilted on its axis. Through the suite's window, he could see the first hints of dawn touching the Hollywood hills. In a few hours, the studio would come alive again, but it would no longer be the same place for him. His phone buzzed. Another text from the caregiver. Your grandmother's asking for her red jacket. Says she needs it for an important meeting. Should I be concerned? Marcus smiled, thinking of the red jacket his grandmother had worn during her journey to America, now carefully preserved in her closet. Even as her memories faded, some things remained etched in her soul. Perhaps that's what storytelling was really about, not just preserving the past, but keeping its spirit alive in the present. He began packing up his equipment, each piece returning to its hidden compartment in the cleaning cart. But this time, instead of feeling like tools of secret rebellion, they felt like stepping stones to something bigger. Tomorrow, he would walk through the front doors of Warner Brothers Studios not as a janitor with a dream, but as a filmmaker with a story to tell. The sun was rising as Marcus wheeled his cart back to the maintenance department. David was there, finishing his shift, concern evident on his face. You okay, kid? You look like you've seen a ghost. Marcus smiled, thinking of the surreal encounter that had just transformed his life. Not a ghost, David. Just a legend who reminded me that sometimes the best stories find their audience in the most unexpected ways. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Warner Brothers lot as Marcus approached the security gate, his grandmother's red jacket folded carefully in his arms. He'd spent the night transferring his footage to a proper hard drive, his hands still smelling of cleaning solution from his last shift. "ID?" the guard asked, barely glancing up from his monitor. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I'm here to see Mr. Eastwood, Marcus Chen." The guard's demeanor changed instantly. "Oh, right, Mr. Chen." The formality of Mr. felt foreign after 2 years of being just another maintenance worker. "You're on the list. Building C, 6th floor." Walking through the front entrance felt like crossing into another dimension. The morning bustle of Hollywood's fleet, producers clutching coffee cups, assistants speed-walking with tablets, actors in casual disguise, was a world he'd only observed from behind a mop handle. Now, he was part of it, even if temporarily. The elevator ride to the 6th floor gave Marcus time to doubt everything. Had last night been real? Would Clint Eastwood even remember their encounter? His phone buzzed, a text from the caregiver. "Your grandmother's very excited about something today. Keeps talking about a movie premiere." Marcus's heart tightened. His grandmother's moments of clarity were becoming rarer, often mixed with confused expectations. He'd learned to navigate her shifting reality with gentle redirections, but today felt different. Maybe she sensed something was changing. The elevator doors opened to a reception area that probably cost more than his yearly salary to decorate. A young woman looked up from her desk, her expression professionally neutral. "Marcus Chen for Mr. Eastwood," he managed, trying to sound like he belonged. "Yes, he's expecting you." She stood, revealing a sleek dress that screamed, "Executive Assistant." "I'm Sarah Rodriguez, follow me." As they walked down the corridor, Sarah spoke without turning. "I saw your footage this morning. Mr. Eastwood had it transferred to our system." Marcus nearly stumbled. "He did? He doesn't waste time when he sees something worthwhile." She stopped at a heavy wooden door. "Word of advice? Be direct with him. He hates Hollywood fluff." Before Marcus could respond, she opened the door to reveal a surprisingly modest office. No gold statues on display, no wall of fame photos, just a space designed for work. Clint Eastwood sat behind a desk that had clearly seen decades of use, reviewing something on a tablet. "The kid with the camera," he said, looking up. "Right. On time. Sarah, hold my calls unless it's Spielberg about that golf game he owes me." Sarah nodded and closed the door, leaving Marcus standing there with his grandmother's jacket still clutched like a shield. "Sit." Eastwood gestured to a chair. "Tell me about the jacket." Marcus carefully placed the red wool garment on his lap. "It's what she wore when she left China. She kept it all these years, even when we barely had enough for rent. Said it reminded her that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from everything you know." Eastwood nodded slowly. "And now she's losing her memories." "Early-stage dementia," Marcus confirmed. "Some days are better than others. But each time she forgets something, it feels like losing a piece of history. That's why you started filming." "Yes, but also..." Marcus paused, gathering courage. "I wanted to show her that her sacrifice meant something, that her story matters." Eastwood leaned back, studying Marcus with the same intensity he'd shown the footage. "You know what's wrong with most films today? They're all spectacle, no soul. Everyone's so busy trying to make things bigger, louder, more expensive that they forget what really moves people." He tapped the tablet. "What you've shot, it's rough around the edges, but it's honest, real." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me, yet." Eastwood pressed a button on his desk phone. "Sarah, send in Tom." Marcus's blood ran cold. Tom Wheeler, head of security, the man who'd nearly caught him numerous times, walked in with a thick folder under his arm. "Mr. Wheeler has compiled quite a file on our midnight filmmaker," Eastwood said, his expression unreadable. 8 months of unauthorized access to editing suites, borrowed equipment, after-hours filming on studio property. Tom placed the folder on Eastwood's desk with a satisfied smile. "We have enough here to press charges for trespassing, misuse of company property." "Or," Eastwood interrupted, "enough to show dedication to craft despite limited resources." He turned to Marcus. "I'm offering you a deal. 3 months, fully funded, to complete your grandmother's story. Professional equipment, proper crew, everything done by the book. Marcus sat stunned as Eastwood continued. But there's a catch. You'll work under my production company's supervision. Tom here will be your security liaison, making sure everything's properly documented and approved. One mistake, one breach of protocol, and it's over. Understand? Yes, absolutely. Good. Eastwood handed the folder back to a clearly disappointed Tom. Wheeler, get him the paperwork. Sarah will handle the equipment requisitions. As Tom reluctantly led Marcus out, Eastwood called after them. And Chen, don't make me regret this. The next few hours passed in a blur of signatures and orientations. Sarah efficiently guided him through the process, explaining terms he'd only read about in filmmaking forums. By afternoon, he had a temporary office, really a converted storage room, but still, a production schedule template and a stack of permits to review. Last thing, Sarah said, handing him a small plastic card. Your new ID, security clearance for all basic production areas. She paused. You know this is unprecedented, right? He doesn't do this kind of thing. Marcus stared at the ID. Instead of maintenance, it now read, Production Director. Why did he choose me? Sarah's professional mask slipped slightly. 20 years ago, I was a janitor here too. Night shift like you. Mr. Eastwood found me writing script coverage during my breaks. Said talent doesn't care about how you start, only how hard you're willing to work. She straightened her designer dress. Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m., don't be late. Marcus left the studio lot that evening through the front gate, his head spinning with possibilities. He had 3 months to tell his grandmother's story properly, with real resources. But he also had Tom Wheeler watching his every move, waiting for him to fail. His phone rang. The caregiver again. Marcus, you need to come. Your grandmother's having one of her difficult days. He found Mei Lin Chen sitting in her favorite chair, the contents of her closet scattered around her. I can't find it, she said in Mandarin. The red jacket, I need it for the premiere. Ma, he said gently, kneeling beside her. I have the jacket right here. He wrapped the wool garment around her shoulders. She touched the fabric, her eyes clearing slightly. You took it to them? To show them our story? Marcus blinked back tears. Even in confusion, she understood something important was happening. Yes, Ma. And they want to help us tell it right. She nodded, suddenly looking more like the strong woman who had raised him. Good. Some stories need to be told while we still remember them. Then her eyes clouded again. Who are you? Marcus held her hand, feeling the weight of both opportunity and responsibility. I'm your grandson, Ma, and I'm going to make sure your story lives forever. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus sat at his small apartment desk, surrounded by his notes and salvaged equipment. Tomorrow, he'd have access to professional cameras, proper editing suites, even a crew. But tonight, he needed to remember why he started this journey. He picked up his mother's broken camera, its lens cracked beyond repair. I wish you could see this, Mom, he whispered. Your son's finally getting a chance to follow your dream. His phone lit up with a text from David. Heard the news. The night shift won't be the same without you, movie man. Make us proud. Marcus looked at his new ID card, then at the old maintenance badge he'd worn for 2 years. Each represented a different kind of education. One formal, one earned in the shadows of Hollywood's dream factory. Now he had to prove he could combine those lessons into something meaningful. The sun was rising again, marking the end of his last night as just a janitor with a dream. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, managing a real budget, directing professional crew members, navigating studio politics. But most importantly, he had 3 months to capture his grandmother's memories before they faded completely. He opened his laptop and began to write, starting with the words that had launched countless Hollywood dreams. Fade in. The cursor blinked steadily on his screen, a rhythm matching his heartbeat. Marcus began typing the treatment for his expanded vision, knowing tomorrow's meeting would require more than just raw footage and good intentions. The story was there, but now it needed structure, professional polish. His phone buzzed again, this time a message from Sarah. Sending you examples of successful documentary treatments. Study them tonight. First impressions matter here. The files arrived moments later, each one a masterclass in how to present a personal story to studio executives. Marcus noticed how they balanced emotional appeal with commercial potential, something he'd need to learn quickly. A knock at his apartment door startled him. David stood there holding a paper bag from their favorite late-night Chinese restaurant. Thought you might need brain food, David said, entering and placing the bag on Marcus's cluttered desk. Last meal as a fellow maintenance worker. You didn't have to. Sure I did. David pulled out containers of kung pao chicken and rice. Besides, I wanted to give you something else. He reached into his jacket and produced a worn leather notebook. Been keeping this for 15 years, ever since I dropped out of film school. Every trick I learned, every technique I couldn't afford to try. Maybe you can put it to better use. Marcus opened the notebook carefully. Its pages were filled with detailed notes, sketches of camera angles, lighting diagrams. David, I can't take this. You're not taking it, you're inheriting it. David sat on the edge of the bed, looking around at Marcus's modest apartment. You know what the hardest part about giving up a dream is? Watching someone else live it. But with you, it feels right. Like maybe all those years weren't wasted if they help you tell this story. They ate in comfortable silence, both men aware that their relationship would never be quite the same. Finally, David spoke again. Tom Wheeler came by after you left. Started asking questions about your after-hours activities. Marcus tensed. What did you tell him? The truth that you were the hardest worker on the night shift, that you treated the equipment with more respect than most of the hotshot directors who come through. David grinned. Didn't mention the times I helped you dodge security cameras, though. A wave of gratitude washed over Marcus. I wouldn't be here without you, you know that. Just remember us little people when you're accepting your Oscar. David joked, but his eyes were serious. And Marcus? Don't let them change your story. Hollywood's good at that, making things shinier, simpler. Your grandmother's journey deserves better. After David left, Marcus returned to his laptop with renewed purpose. He worked through the night, fueled by cooling Chinese food and determination. The treatment began taking shape. Red Jacket, An American Journey. The story of one woman's sacrifice told through the lens of her grandson's love and the fading memories of a generation. Around 4 a.m., his phone lit up with a text from the caregiver. She's asking for you. Says she remembers something important about the day she left Shanghai. Marcus grabbed his keys, treatment forgotten. He found his grandmother sitting in the dark, more lucid than she'd been in weeks. The boat, she said as soon as he entered. I never told you about the boat. For the next hour, Chen recalled details of her escape that she'd never shared before. The smell of rust and salt water, the way the smuggler's hands shook as he took her money, the sound of waves hitting the hull during those terrifying nights at sea. Marcus recorded everything on his phone, knowing these moments of clarity were precious and fleeting. When she finally drifted off to sleep, he sat watching her breathe, the red jacket still draped across her shoulders. Dawn was breaking when he returned home. He had just enough time to shower and change before his first official day as a Warner Bros. Director. The treatment could wait. He had something better now. Real memories. Raw and unpolished, exactly what Eastwood had responded to in the first place. His maintenance uniform hung on the back of his door, a reminder of where he'd started. Marcus touched it one last time, before changing into the nicest clothes he owned, a blue button-down shirt and khakis he'd bought for his mother's funeral. The morning traffic seemed different now, less oppressive. As he approached the studio gates, he saw Tom Wheeler conducting his morning security briefing. Their eyes met briefly, and Marcus realized something important. Wheeler wasn't just an obstacle to overcome, he represented every doubt, every reason why this story shouldn't succeed. But then he thought of his grandmother's voice in the pre-dawn darkness, sharing secrets she'd carried for 50 years. He thought of David's notebook, filled with deferred dreams. He thought of his mother's broken, camera waiting on his shelf like a torch passed between generations. Marcus Chen drove through the front gate of Warner Brothers Studios, no longer hiding in shadows. He had 3 months to prove that some stories were worth telling, no matter the odds, and he was ready to begin. The first week of official production hit Marcus like a tidal wave. His converted storage room turned office became command central for an operation far more complex than his midnight filming sessions had prepared him for. Sarah materialized at his door precisely at 8 a.m., tablet in hand, ready for your crash course in studio protocol. I've been here since 6, Marcus replied, surrounded by production manuals and budget spreadsheets. Trying to make sense of all this. Smart. She perched on the edge of his desk, scrolling through her tablet. Here's your day. 9 a.m. production meeting, 10:30 equipment requisition review, lunch with the documentary department heads, then your first official shoot with your grandmother at 2 p.m. Marcus looked up sharply. Today? I thought we'd have more. Time to prep. Welcome to studio filmmaking, Sarah cut in. Everything happens faster than you expect and slower than you want. Tom Wheeler's already approved the shooting location at your grandmother's house. He'll be there to supervise. The morning meetings were a blur of new faces and terminology. Marcus sat next to Eastwood during the production meeting, trying to absorb everything while maintaining his composure. The legendary director remained, mostly silent, watching Marcus field questions from department heads with decades more experience. About the historical recreations, the production designer, a veteran named Jack Morrison, leaned forward. These scenes in 1960 Shanghai, you're thinking practical locations or stage builds? Marcus thought quickly. Practical. There's a section of Chinatown we can dress. I've already scouted it during my previous filming. He caught Tom Wheeler's smirk from across the table. And the boat sequence? Jack pressed. Your grandmother's escape? That needs to be authentic, Marcus insisted. No CGI water, no green screen. She spent 3 days in that cargo hold. The audience needs to feel that claustrophobia. Eastwood nodded almost imperceptibly. After the meeting, he pulled Marcus aside. You're learning, he said. But remember, every decision you make now costs real money. Choose your battles carefully. The equipment requisition meeting was equally overwhelming. The camera package alone cost more than Marcus had earned in 2 years of maintenance work. The cinematographer Lisa Reeves walked him through the options. The Arri Alexa Mini would give us the flexibility for both documentary and dramatic sequences, she explained. But if you want something more intimate for your grandmother's interviews, I want her comfortable, Marcus interrupted. Something small, unobtrusive, like we're just having a conversation. Lisa smiled. I have some ideas about that. Lunch with the department heads felt like a test, which Marcus realized it probably was. These people had worked on Oscar-winning documentaries, and here he was, a former janitor telling them how to shoot his grandmother's story. Why this story? The sound designer, Mike Chen, no relation, asked between bites. What makes it different from every other immigrant narrative? Marcus set down his fork. Because it's not just about immigration. It's about memory. What we choose to remember, what we're forced to forget, and what happens when those memories start slipping away. My grandmother isn't just losing her past. She's losing the reason she gave up everything to come here. The table fell silent. Finally, Mike nodded. Okay, kid, you've got my attention. At 1:30 p.m., Marcus arrived at his grandmother's house with a small army of crew members. Tom Wheeler was already there, clipboard in hand, checking permits and IDs. Everything by the book, he reminded Marcus with barely concealed satisfaction. One violation and it's over, Marcus finished. I remember. Inside, the caregiver was helping Mei Lin prepare for the interview. His grandmother wore her red jacket, her hair newly done, looking more alert than she had in weeks. Who are all these people? She asked in Mandarin as Marcus entered. They're here to help us tell your story, Ma, he replied, kneeling beside her chair. Remember how we talked about making a movie about your journey? She touched the sleeve of her jacket. Yes, the premiere. We need to hurry before I forget again. Marcus felt tears threatening but forced them back. He had to be a director now, not just a grandson. Lisa approached quietly with a small camera setup. "We'll start simple," she said. "Just you and her, talking. The main cameras will be in the background, nothing too intrusive." For the next 3 hours, Marcus sat with his grandmother, gently guiding her through her memories. Sometimes she was crystal clear, describing details that made the crew members wipe their eyes. Other times she drifted, mixing decades and places. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The hardest part," she said at one point, completely lucid, "wasn't leaving. It was knowing I could never go back. Every step forward meant another piece of home fading away." She looked directly into the camera. "Now the fading won't stop, but this time I'm not choosing it." When they finally wrapped, Tom Wheeler approached Marcus. His expression had changed subtly. "That was well handled," he said stiffly. "The permits are approved for tomorrow's Chinatown shoot." Sarah stayed behind to help Marcus review the footage. "This is gold," she said, watching the interview clips. "But you know tomorrow will be different. Period recreation, extras, all the Hollywood machinery you've been avoiding." "I know." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. "But today we got what matters most. The heart of the story." That night, instead of going home, Marcus returned to his office at the studio. He opened David's notebook, finding a section on interview techniques. In the margins, David had written, "Truth comes in silence, let the camera wait." His phone buzzed, a text from the caregiver. "She's still talking about today. Says she feels like a movie star. Thank you for giving her this." Marcus smiled, then noticed an email from Eastwood. "Watch today's footage. Remember what I said about Soul? Keep going." He worked late into the night preparing for tomorrow's challenges. The Chinatown shoot would be his first time directing a full crew, managing extras, creating a period-accurate world on a real street. Everything he'd learned from his guerrilla filming sessions would be tested against professional standards. Around midnight, a knock at his office door startled him. It was David, still in his maintenance uniform. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. "Old habits die hard, huh?" Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. "How did you know?" "Because this used to be my hiding spot too, back when I thought I'd be the one making movies." David settled into a chair. "Saw the interview footage. Wheeler was showing it to the security team, trying to find something to complain about. Instead, they all ended up crying." "Really?" "Your grandmother's story. It's universal. Everyone has someone they're afraid of losing, memories they're trying to hold on to." David picked up a production schedule. "Tomorrow's the big show, isn't it? Full crew, period setting?" Marcus nodded. "Any advice?" "Yeah. Remember why you started this. Not for Eastwood, not for the studio. For her. For every immigrant parent who gave up everything so their kids could have more." David stood to leave. "And Marcus? The night crew's rooting for you. Even Wheeler, though he'd never admit it." After David left, Marcus returned to his prep work with renewed energy. Tomorrow would test everything he'd learned, both from his midnight filmmaking and his crash course in studio production. But tonight, in this office that still smelled faintly of cleaning supplies, he was exactly where he needed to be. The digital clock on his desk blinked 2:17 a.m. when Marcus finally looked up from his storyboards. He'd mapped out every angle for the Chinatown sequence, drawing on memories of his grandmother's descriptions and historical photographs he'd studied during his maintenance days. His phone lit up with a text from Lisa, the cinematographer. "Just checked the weather. Dawn forecast looks perfect for that opening shot we discussed. You ready for this?" Marcus stared at the message, remembering how just a week ago he was shooting with borrowed equipment and stolen moments. Now he had an entire crew waiting on his vision. The responsibility felt both terrifying and exhilarating. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway, looking surprisingly fresh despite the late hour. "You're not the only one who works late," she said, noting his surprised expression. "Thought you might want to see this." She handed him a folder. "Preliminary marketing research on documentary audiences. Turns out there's huge interest in stories about memory loss and family history, Your grandmother's story could hit both demographics. Marcus flipped through the reports. Marketing research? Already? Welcome to Hollywood. Everything's about anticipating audience reaction. She sat down, across from him. But that's not why I'm really here. Tom Wheeler's been asking questions about your old footage. Marcus tensed. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's looking for something specific. Be careful tomorrow. He'll be watching every permit, every setup. She stood to leave, then paused. By the way, that sequence you shot in the abandoned warehouse last month? The one with the makeshift boat interior? Wheeler doesn't know about that one. Let's keep it that way. After Sarah left, Marcus pulled out his original footage, shot during those midnight sessions. The warehouse sequence she mentioned had been his most ambitious guerrilla shoot, a recreation of the cargo hold where his grandmother had hidden during her escape. He'd used old shipping crates and careful lighting to suggest the cramped space, filming with his salvaged camera propped on boxes. Now he had a real budget, professional equipment, and a full crew. But watching that rough footage, he saw something raw and honest in its imperfection. He made a note. Maintain urgency. Don't let Polish override truth. Around 4 a.m., exhaustion finally overtook him. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for what he promised would be just a moment. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw his grandmother as she was in the old photographs. Young, determined, wearing that red jacket like armor against an uncertain future. The buzz of his phone jolted him awake. The caregiver's message read, "She's been up since 3, insisting on practicing her lines. I tried to explain it's a documentary, but she's convinced she's starring in a Hollywood movie." Marcus smiled despite his worry. In a way, his grandmother wasn't wrong. Her story was finally getting the Hollywood treatment it deserved. He just had to make sure it didn't lose its soul in the process. The first hints of dawn were touching the Hollywood sign when Marcus gathered his materials. In a few hours, Chinatown would transform into 1960s Shanghai, and he would have to prove that Eastwood's faith in him wasn't misplaced. He changed into fresh clothes he'd started keeping in his office, trying to look the part of a director. His maintenance badge still sat in his desk drawer, a reminder of where he'd started and how far he had to go. The drive to Chinatown was surreal. Production trucks were already parked along the streets, crew members setting up equipment with practiced efficiency. Period cars from the 1960s lined the curbs. Extras in historical costume waited in groups, their breath visible in the early morning air. Jack Morrison, the production designer, approached with a tablet showing reference photos. We've aged the storefronts, hidden modern signage, and added period-appropriate details. The merchants were surprisingly helpful once they heard the story we're telling. Marcus nodded, recognizing many of the shop owners. He'd interviewed them during his guerrilla filming days, gathering background on the immigrant experience. Now they were active participants in recreating that history. Lisa appeared with her camera team. First setup's ready. We've got about 20 minutes of perfect morning light. Tom Wheeler materialized as if summoned, permit clipboard in hand. Everything's in order, but remember, any deviation from the approved shot list needs prior authorization. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all these professionals waiting for his direction. He thought of his grandmother, probably, sitting in her chair right now, practicing lines for a documentary that needed no script. He thought of his mother, who never got to finish telling her own stories. All right, he said, voice stronger than he expected. Let's make some movie magic. The Chinatown shoot marked a turning point. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself navigating between two worlds: the polished professional universe of studio filmmaking and the intimate fragile space of his grandmother's fading memories. The dailies from the historical recreations looked stunning. Lisa had captured the early morning light filtering through Chinese lanterns, transforming modern Los Angeles into a dreamlike vision of 1960s Shanghai. But it was the quiet moments with his grandmother that kept the crew emotionally invested. We've got a problem, Sarah announced one morning, entering Marcus's office without knocking. The memory care facility called. Your grandmother's having more confused episodes. They're concerned about continuing the interviews. Marcus set down the storyboards he'd been reviewing. How bad? She didn't recognize the caregiver this morning. Kept asking for her mother. Sarah's professional demeanor softened. There's more. Tom Wheeler's requesting a meeting with Eastwood. Says he has concerns about the project's timeline. The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. Marcus found himself in Eastwood's office, sitting across from Tom Wheeler and a studio lawyer. The fact is, Wheeler began, the subject's deteriorating condition poses significant risks. We're investing considerable resources in a story that might not be completable if my grandmother loses her memory completely. Marcus interrupted, feeling heat rise in his chest. That's exactly why this story matters. We're not just documenting her journey to America. We're capturing what it means to lose the very memories that defined that journey. Eastwood, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Wheeler's doing his job, kid. But you're right. Sometimes the story you end up telling isn't the one you started with. He turned to the lawyer. Make whatever adjustments are needed. The project continues. After the meeting, Marcus drove to the memory care facility. He found his grandmother in the garden, wearing her red jacket despite the warm afternoon. Ma, he said gently in Mandarin, do you remember what we were filming yesterday? She looked at him with clear eyes. The boat. But you did it wrong. Wrong? How? The ceiling was higher in your set. In the real boat, I couldn't even sit up straight. 3 days crouching in darkness. Her gaze drifted. Who are you again? Marcus swallowed hard. I'm your grandson. We're making a movie about your life. Movie? She smiled. Will there be a premiere? Yes, Ma. And you'll be the star. That evening, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his key crew members. They gathered in his office, now covered with photos, storyboards, and timeline charts. We need to change our approach, he announced. Instead of fighting against her memory loss, we make it part of the story. The fragmentation, the confusion, it's all part of how we experience history. Lisa, the cinematographer, nodded slowly. We could adjust the visual language, make the historical scenes more impressionistic as her memories fade. Like trying to hold on to water, Mike, the sound designer, added. We could work with that orally too. Layer sounds, let them dissolve. The team worked late into the night, restructuring the film's approach. Marcus thought about his guerrilla filmmaking days, how limitations had forced creativity. Now he had resources, but the biggest constraint was time itself. His grandmother's memories slipping away like sand through an hourglass. David stopped by around midnight, still in his maintenance uniform. Heard about what happened today, he said, setting down 2 cups of coffee. Brought reinforcements. Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. Remember when my biggest worry was avoiding security cameras? You were better at that than Wheeler likes to admit. David picked up a production photo. You know, I've been thinking about something. All those nights you spent filming in secret, maybe they weren't just about making do with what you had. Maybe you were learning how to tell a story from the shadows, from the spaces between what we can see clearly. The idea resonated with Marcus. The next morning, he asked Sarah to arrange a screening of his original footage, all of it, including the unauthorized shoots. Tom Wheeler sat stiffly in the screening room as Marcus's guerrilla footage played. The handheld shots through chain-link fences, the hidden camera interviews with elderly immigrants in Chinatown, the makeshift recreations in abandoned warehouses, all of it raw, imperfect, but undeniably authentic. This is what got Eastwood's attention in the first place, Marcus explained. Not because it was polished, but because it was real. We've been trying so hard to make everything perfect that we've lost some of that truth. Wheeler was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, what exactly are you proposing? A hybrid approach. We keep the professional setups for the major sequences, but we incorporate more intimate, immediate footage. And Marcus took a deep breath. I want to film in some restricted locations, places that capture the feeling of being somewhere you're not supposed to be. Absolutely not, Wheeler began, but Sarah interrupted. Actually, that could work in our favor. Controlled guerrilla-style shooting properly permitted but designed to look unauthorized. It would add authenticity without legal risks. Wheeler frowned. And the existing unauthorized footage? Could be presented as discovered archival material, Sarah suggested smoothly. With proper documentation, of course. To Marcus's surprise, Wheeler seemed to consider this. I'll need detailed plans, every location, every setup. He stood to leave, then turned back. That warehouse sequence with the boat interior, how did you light it? Christmas lights and borrowed construction lamps, Marcus admitted. Plus, a lot of careful framing. Wheeler almost smiled. Resourceful. I'll have the permits on your desk tomorrow. The next few days saw a shift in the production's energy. The crew, inspired by Marcus's original footage, found ways to maintain professional standards while capturing more immediate, raw moments. They filmed in tight alleys, crowded markets, and forgotten corners of the city, all properly permitted but feeling deliciously illicit. Marcus spent every free moment with his grandmother, recording their conversations even when she was confused. Sometimes her memory slips led to unexpected revelations. "The fish," she said one afternoon, during what had started as a confused episode. "In the boat, I could smell fish above me. That's how I knew when we were near land." The smell changed. These details, fragmentary but vivid, became the backbone of the evolving narrative. The film was becoming something different from what Marcus had originally planned. Less a straightforward immigration story, more a meditation on memory itself. Sarah brought him daily reports of the studio's response. "The executives are intrigued," she said. "They think you might be onto something unique. A documentary about both preserving and losing history, told through a personal lens." Even Tom Wheeler seemed to be coming around. He started offering suggestions for locations that could work for the guerrilla-style shoots, places with the right combination of visual impact and controlled access. But the clock was ticking. His grandmother's lucid moments were becoming rarer, though when they came, they carried surprising power. "I remember now," she said during one clear afternoon. "Why I kept the jacket. Not just as a reminder of the journey, but as proof. Proof that I was once brave enough to leave everything behind. Sometimes I forget that I was ever that brave." Marcus held her hand, the camera rolling forgotten between them. "You're still brave, Ma. Every day you face the fog in your mind, you're just as brave as you were on that boat." That night, reviewing the footage in his office, Marcus realized something crucial. His grandmother's story wasn't just about preserving memories. It was about finding meaning in their loss. Every forgotten detail made the remembered ones more precious. Every confused moment highlighted the clarity that remained. He began rewriting the narrative structure, weaving together past and present, clarity and confusion, professional footage and guerrilla shots. The story was becoming a tapestry of memory itself. Some parts sharp and vivid, others fraying at the edges, but all of it true. David found him asleep at his desk the next morning, surrounded by notes and editing sequences. "You know what this reminds me of?" he said, waking Marcus with fresh coffee. "Those nights when you were just starting out, trying to figure out how to tell her story with nothing but borrowed equipment and determination." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Everything's different now." "Is it?" David gestured at the organized chaos of the office. "You're still that kid with a camera, trying to capture something precious before it slips away. You just have better tools now." Marcus pondered David's words as he prepared for the day's shoot. They were filming in the actual port where many Chinese immigrants had first arrived, including his grandmother. Tom Wheeler had somehow secured permits for areas usually restricted to film crews. "Your grandmother's story touched some nerves at the Port Authority," Wheeler explained gruffly when Marcus expressed surprise. "Turns out the commissioner's mother came through here too. Similar circumstances." The location had changed dramatically since the 1960s, but cinematographer Lisa had found ways to frame shots that captured the timeless essence of arrival and departure. They filmed at dawn when modern container ships were merely silhouettes against the rising sun. "We're losing the light," Lisa called out, adjusting her camera. "But I think we got something special there." Marcus nodded, reviewing the footage on a monitor. The morning mist had created an almost dreamlike quality, blurring the line between past and present, perfect for a story about fading memories. Sarah appeared at his side, tablet in hand. Eastwood wants to see a rough cut of what we have so far. And there's something else. She hesitated. The memory care facility called again. Your grandmother had a difficult night. She's been asking for her mother, thinking she's back in Shanghai. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest. I should go see her. Go, Sarah said. I'll handle things here. At the facility, Marcus found his grandmother in an agitated state, pacing her room in the red jacket. I have to catch the boat, she insisted in Mandarin. They won't wait forever. Ma, Marcus said gently. The boat was a long time ago. You're in America now. Safe. She stopped pacing, studying his face. America? Her expression cleared slightly. Yes, America. We're making a movie about it, aren't we? That's right. Good. Someone needs to remember. She sat heavily in her chair. Even if I can't. Marcus stayed with her until she fell asleep, then returned to the studio for the rough cut screening. He found Eastwood already in the editing suite reviewing footage. Sit down, kid, the director said without looking up. Let's see what you've got. For the next 2 hours, they watched the assembled sequences. The polished historical recreations flowed into intimate verite moments. Guerrilla-style footage merged with professional setups. Through it all, his grandmother's story emerged in fragments and flashes, mirroring her own relationship with memory. When the lights came up, Eastwood was silent for a long moment. You've found something here, he finally said. It's not just her story anymore. It's about how we all hold on to the past even as it slips away. Is that good? It's honest. And that's better than good. Eastwood stood. But you're going to need a stronger ending. The audience needs to feel what's at stake, not just for her but for everyone who's ever watched someone they love fade away. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus revisited his original footage, the secret recordings, the midnight shoots, the quiet moments with his grandmother when she didn't know the camera was rolling. In one clip, she was folding laundry, talking about her mother's cooking. The secret, she said, was in how she folded the dumplings. 3 precise creases, never more. I used to watch her hands. I thought I'd never forget. She looked up, confused. What was I saying? Marcus started making notes. The ending needed to be about more than just completing her story. It needed to show how memory itself worked, how some details remained crystal clear while others dissolved, how the act of remembering could sometimes be as powerful as the memories themselves. He worked through the night, restructuring the narrative. David found him there in the morning, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scribbled notes. You look like you've had an epiphany, David said, clearing space on the cluttered desk. Maybe I have. Marcus showed him the new outline. We've been trying to preserve her memories, but what if that's not the point? What if it's about understanding how memory shapes us, even as it fades? David read through the notes. This is different from what you started with. Everything's different now. But maybe that's the story, how change is the only constant, in memory and in life. Marcus looked at his friend. Does that make any sense? More than you know. David handed back the notes. Just remember, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we don't fully understand until we're telling them. The revelation came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Marcus was reviewing footage in his office when Sarah burst in, her usual composure shattered. You need to see this, she said, placing a thick folder on his desk. The research team found something while fact-checking your grandmother's immigration records. Marcus opened the folder, his coffee growing cold beside him. Inside were documents, photographs, and immigration papers he'd never seen before. But it was a single black and white photograph that made his heart stop. His grandmother, much younger, standing with a small boy who wasn't his mother. There's more, Sarah said quietly. According to these records, your grandmother didn't come to America alone. She had a son who stayed behind in China. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Marcus stared at the photograph, at the boys, serious expression so similar to his own. That's impossible, she would have told us. The records are clear. His name was Chen Wei. He would have been your uncle. Sarah hesitated. There's something else. He's still alive, living in Shanghai. Marcus sat back, his mind racing. How many times had his grandmother mentioned Shanghai in her confused states? How often had she called out for someone they assumed was her mother? What if... Does Eastwood know? Sarah nodded. He wants to meet. Now. In Eastwood's office, the legendary director was uncharacteristically animated. This changes everything, he said, pacing behind his desk. A mother forced to choose between her children. One left behind, one brought forward. It's not just about memory anymore. It's about the prices we pay for our choices. But she never told anyone. Marcus protested. Not my mother, not me. Maybe she couldn't. Eastwood stopped pacing. Some memories aren't just forgotten. They're buried. Tom Wheeler cleared his throat from the doorway. I took the liberty of making some inquiries through official channels. Chen Wei is a professor at Shanghai University. He's been trying to find information about his mother for years. Marcus felt the weight of revelation pressing down on him. What do we do? That's your call, kid. Eastwood fixed him with an intense stare. But remember, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that find us, not the ones we go looking for. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah worked with legal to arrange contact with Chen Wei. The production team began exploring the logistics of filming in Shanghai, but Marcus couldn't focus on any of it. He kept thinking about his grandmother, wearing her red jacket, carrying this secret for over 50 years. He drove to the memory care facility in a daze, found her sitting in her usual chair looking out the window. Ma, he said softly in Mandarin, kneeling beside her. I need to ask you something. Who is Chen Wei? Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes cleared, focused with an intensity he hadn't seen in months. Where did you hear that name? We found records, photos. He took her hand. Why didn't you tell us? Tears filled her eyes. Some stories are too painful to remember. Some choices. She touched her red jacket. Do you know why I really kept this? It was what I was wearing when I had to choose. One child to save, one to leave behind. The officials would only let me take one. Marcus felt his own tears falling. Why my mother? Because she was sick. The doctors in America could help her. Wei was strong, healthy. His father's family promised to care for him. She gripped Marcus's hand tighter. Every day I thought about going back. But if I did, they would never have let me leave again. So I carried the pain, buried it so deep that sometimes I could pretend it wasn't real. The revelation transformed the project overnight. Eastwood called an emergency production meeting the next morning. We need to move fast, he announced to the assembled team. Chen Wei has agreed to be interviewed. He wants to tell his side of the story. But my grandmother, Marcus began. We'll have moments of clarity, Sarah interjected. The doctors say emotional revelations can sometimes cut through the fog of dementia. We need to capture this while we can. The next week was a whirlwind of activity. While part of the team prepared for the Shanghai shoot, Marcus spent every possible moment with his grandmother, gently helping her unearth buried memories. The day I left, she said during one session, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Wei gave me his favorite toy soldier. Said it would protect me on the journey. I kept it in my jacket pocket until when, Ma? Until I gave it to your mother when she was in the hospital. Said it would protect her too. Her eyes clouded. Did it work? Is she safe? Marcus swallowed hard. She's at peace, Ma. David found Marcus in his office late that night reviewing the new footage. You okay? Heard about the brother? I don't know what I am. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. Everything we thought we knew about her story. It was just the surface. Maybe that's true of all stories, David suggested. Maybe we only ever see the parts people are strong enough to show us. The Shanghai filming preparations moved forward at breakneck speed. Tom Wheeler, surprisingly, became an invaluable ally, using his connections to expedite permits and permissions. "Your grandmother's story," he said gruffly when Marcus thanked him. "It matters. More than my rules and regulations." Lisa, the cinematographer, developed a visual strategy for the Shanghai sequences. "We'll mirror the memory fragments," she explained. "Show how the same moments can be remembered differently from two sides of the world." But the real challenge came when they had to tell Chen Wei about his mother's condition. The professor's response, sent via email, brought Marcus to tears. "All these years I thought she had forgotten me by choice. To learn that memory itself is now her enemy. Perhaps that is life's darkest joke. But I want to see her even if she doesn't remember me. Some bonds exist deeper than memory." The production team worked around the clock to prepare for what would now be the film's emotional core, the reunion of a mother and the son she was forced to leave behind. But as they planned, Marcus struggled with a deeper question. Was he right to unearth this buried pain? Sarah found him wrestling with this late one night. "You're wondering if you should have left it alone?" "She buried these memories for a reason," Marcus said. "What right do I have to dig them up?" "The same right she gave you when she agreed to tell her story," Sarah replied. "Sometimes the stories we need to tell aren't the ones we started with." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the memory care facility to find his grandmother more lucid than she'd been in weeks. She was sitting at her small desk writing. "What are you working on, Ma?" "Letters," she said, not looking up. "All the ones I never sent to Wei. Every birthday, every New Year. Every time I saw something that reminded me of him." She turned to Marcus, her eyes clear. "I may not remember tomorrow, but today I remember everything." Marcus sat with her as she wrote, the camera forgotten in his bag. She filled page after page with 50 years of unsent love, regret, and explanation. When she finally stopped, her hands were trembling. "Will you help me?" she asked. "Will you take these to him?" "Yes, Ma." "And would you like to see him? He wants to come here." She touched her red jacket, the one she'd worn on the day of separation. "After all these years, will he understand?" "Think he already does." That night, Marcus added a new section to the film's structure. It would no longer be just about preserving memories, but about understanding them, about how some choices echo across decades, how some wounds need to be reopened to truly heal. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his key creative team. The revelation about Chen Wei had shifted not just the story's focus, but its entire emotional core. "We need to restructure everything," he explained, pinning new storyboards to his office wall. "Every memory we've captured, every recreation we've filmed, it all means something different now." Lisa studied the new visual approach. "We could use color grading to differentiate between her memories of America and China. Make Shanghai feel more vivid in the flashbacks, like it's been preserved in amber." Mike, the sound designer, nodded enthusiastically. "And layer the audio from her letters over the historical footage. Let her words bridge the gap between past and present." As they worked, Sarah managed the logistics of filming in Shanghai. "Chen Wei has arranged for us to shoot at the actual locations from your grandmother's past. The apartment building where they lived, the school where she taught, even the dock where she left from." Tom Wheeler, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "There's something else you should see." He placed a manila envelope on Marcus's desk. "I had my contacts in Shanghai do some deeper research. They found these." Inside were more photographs. These ones showing Chen Wei growing up. School portraits, family gatherings, graduations, all the moments his grandmother had missed. But it was the last photo that caught Marcus's breath. Chen Wei as an adult, standing with his own family, holding a worn toy soldier. He kept it, Marcus whispered. All these years he kept his own soldier. The weight of this discovery led Marcus back to the memory care facility. He found his grandmother having one of her clearer days, arranging old photographs on her bed. "I've been remembering," she said as he entered. "Little things. The way Wei would sing to himself while doing homework. How he loved sweet bean buns from the corner shop." She picked up a photo. "Did I ever tell you about his father?" Marcus sat beside her. "No, Ma, you never did. He was a good man. A teacher. He understood why I had to take your mother to America for treatment. Said he would make sure Wei grew up knowing his mother was brave, not a deserter." Her hands trembled. "I wonder if he kept that promise." "He did, Ma. Wei became a teacher, too. A professor." She smiled, a mix of pride and pain crossing her face. Like his father. Some things passed down without us even knowing. That evening, Marcus showed the new photographs to Eastwood. The director studied them in silence before speaking. "You know what this means for the film," he said finally. "It's not just about preserving your grandmother's memories anymore. It's about reconciling two versions of the same story. The one she tried to forget and the one Wei had to live with. But how do we tell both sides without betraying either?" Marcus asked. "By being honest about the complexity. Sometimes there are no villains in a story, just people trying to survive impossible choices." Eastwood handed back the photos. "Your grandmother buried these memories to protect herself, to keep functioning. Wei preserved them to maintain his connection to her. Both choices were acts of love." The production team worked late into the night, revising the shooting schedule to accommodate the new narrative direction. David stopped by with his usual coffee delivery, finding Marcus surrounded by dual timelines. One tracking his grandmother's life in America, the other following Wei's parallel journey in Shanghai. "You know what this reminds me of?" David said, clearing space for the coffee cups. "Those old Chinese paintings where the same story is told from multiple perspectives, each view revealing something new about the whole." Marcus looked up from his notes. "That's it. That's how we need to structure this. Not as a linear narrative, but as a conversation between memories. Hers, Wei's, even the ones they both tried to forget." The next few days saw a flurry of activity as the team prepared for the Shanghai shoot. But amid the logistics and planning, Marcus couldn't shake a growing concern. He found Sarah in her office, reviewing travel documents. "What if we're wrong?" he asked. "What if bringing all this to the surface does more harm than good?" Sarah set down her tablet. "You know what I've learned working with Eastwood all these years? The stories that scare us most are usually the ones that need to be told most urgently." The flight to Shanghai felt like crossing more than just physical distance. Marcus sat in the darkened cabin, reviewing footage on his laptop while most of the crew slept. The images of his grandmother's interviews now carried new weight, each memory fragment a piece of a larger, more complex puzzle. Sarah, seated beside him, was finalizing the shooting schedule. "Chen Wei will meet us at the airport," she said, quietly. "He's arranged everything, locations, local crew, even a translator, though he speaks perfect English." "How much does he know about her condition?" "Everything. I sent him the recent footage." Sarah hesitated. "He watched it all in one sitting, then sent back a single message. Now I understand the cost of her sacrifice." The Shanghai that greeted them was a city of contrasts. Gleaming skyscrapers rising above ancient neighborhoods, history and progress intertwined like DNA strands. Chen Wei waited at arrivals, a distinguished man in his 60s whose posture reminded Marcus startlingly of his grandmother. "Welcome to Shanghai," he said in English, then switched to perfect Mandarin. "Or should I say, welcome home?" The production team set up base in a boutique hotel in the old French concession, not far from where Marcus's grandmother had once lived. Chen Wei had transformed one of the conference rooms into a research center, walls covered with photographs and documents, spanning 5 decades. "I've been preparing for this moment since I received your first message," he explained. "Every memory, every record, every story I could gather about the years after she left." Lisa moved through the room, filming Wei's collection. "This is incredible," she whispered to Marcus. He's been making his own documentary all these years, just waiting for someone to see it. Tom Wheeler, who had insisted on coming to handle international permissions, studied the display with uncharacteristic emotion. "Your grandmother's departure papers," he said, pointing to a yellowed document. "The official reason listed is medical, emergency, one dependent." They didn't even record Wei's existence. The first few days were spent filming at historical locations. Chen Wei proved to be not just a subject but an invaluable guide, his academic's precision combining with deeply personal knowledge. "This was our apartment," he said, standing before a pre-war building. 3rd floor, 2 rooms. She would sing while preparing dinner, old songs from her village. Sometimes, when the wind is right, I imagine I can still hear her voice. Each location unlocked new layers of the story. The school where she had taught, now modernized but still echoing with history. The market where she had sold her jewelry to pay for the journey. The dock where she had made the impossible choice between her children. The hardest part, Wei confided during an interview, wasn't watching her leave. It was watching her try to turn back. My father had to hold her, remind her about my sister's illness, about the American doctors who could save her. I remember her red jacket disappearing into the crowd, and how I convinced myself it was just another teaching day, that she would return by sunset. The crew worked with focused intensity, everyone sensing the gravity of what they were capturing. Lisa developed a visual language that linked Shanghai's locations with the American footage, finding echoes and parallels between the two worlds. But it was the discovery in Wei's personal archive that changed everything. Among his carefully preserved documents was a bundle of letters, dozens of them, never sent, written by him to his mother over the years. "I wrote to her every New Year," he explained, handling the aged papers carefully, "telling her about my life, my studies, my own family. Even when I had no address to send them to, I kept writing. It was my way of keeping her alive in my world." Marcus thought of his grandmother's own unsent letters, waiting in her room thousands of miles away. 2 lifetimes of unspoken words, reaching across an ocean of silence. Sarah, who had been coordinating with the memory care facility daily, received an urgent call one evening. "Your grandmother had a breakthrough," she told Marcus. "She spent hours telling the staff about Wei, about their life here. It's like finding him again has unlocked something in her mind." The team worked around the clock, racing against both jet lag and time itself. They filmed Wei teaching his classes, interacting with his own grandchildren, living the life that had paralleled their American existence. "I never felt abandoned," Wei insisted during a late-night interview. "Father made sure I understood she left one child to save another. In doing so, she taught me my first lesson about love. Sometimes it requires impossible choices." Tom Wheeler, who had been quietly managing bureaucratic obstacles, approached Marcus with unexpected news. "The Chinese authorities have granted special permission for a live video connection with the memory care facility, if you want to arrange a virtual reunion before the actual one." The suggestion led to a flurry of preparation. The team set up equipment in Wei's university office, choosing a quiet time when the connection would be strongest. Marcus sat with Wei as they waited for the call to connect. "Are you ready for this?" he asked his newly discovered uncle. Wei smiled, softly. "I've been ready for 50 years. When the screen flickered to life, showing his grandmother in her familiar chair, wearing her red jacket, Wei's composure cracked slightly. She stared at the screen, confusion and recognition battling in her expression. "Wei?" she whispered in Mandarin. "Is it really you?" "Yes, Mother. It's me." What followed was an hour of conversation that moved between past and present, clarity and confusion, joy and regret. Sometimes she was the mother who had left him, sharp with memory and remorse. Other times she drifted, speaking to him as the child he had been. Through it all, Wei remained gentle, responsive, adapting to wherever her mind took her. "The soldier," she said suddenly. "The one you gave me for protection." Wei reached into his jacket and pulled out the worn toy. "I kept its brother safe," he said. "All these years they've been standing guard on opposite sides of the world. The crew filmed with tears in their eyes, capturing a reunion 50 years in the making. Lisa's camera moved between the screen showing grandmother and the real-time reactions of her son, creating a visual dialogue between past and present. After the call ended, Wei sat in silence for a long moment. "All my life," he finally said, "I wondered if she thought about me as much as I thought about her. Now I understand. She never stopped thinking about me. She just learned to hide it where the pain couldn't reach." That night, reviewing the footage in his hotel room, Marcus realized they had captured something beyond their original scope. This wasn't just a story about memory and immigration. It was about how love persists even when memories fade, how connections survive across time and distance, how sometimes the deepest bonds are forged in moments of greatest separation. Sarah found him still working at dawn. The memory care facility called again. "Your grandmother's been asking when Wei is coming home. Not to visit. She specifically said coming home." Marcus looked out at the Shanghai sunrise. So different from the Los Angeles light he knew, yet somehow familiar. "Maybe that's what this whole project has been about," he said. "Finding our way home, even when home exists in two places at once." The team spent their final days in Shanghai gathering what Wei called memory anchors, physical objects and locations that could help bridge the past and present. They filmed at the small temple where his father had taken him after his mother left, the bench in People's Square where they had shared their last meal together, the school playground where he had waited every day for months, hoping to see her, red jacket in the crowd. Children are resilient, Wei reflected during an evening interview. But resilience doesn't mean absence of pain. It means learning to grow around it, like a tree around an obstacle. The production schedule was intense, but Tom Wheeler surprised everyone by smoothing the way with local authorities. "Your grandmother's story," he explained when Marcus thanked him. "It's bigger than our usual regulations. Some things matter more than rules." Lisa had developed a sophisticated approach to filming Wei's daily life, capturing moments that eerily mirrored his mother's habits in Los Angeles. The way they both arranged their teacups, their shared gesture of touching their left temple when deep in thought, the identical way they folded paper, all unconscious connections that had survived. 50 years of separation. "It's like watching two performances of the same symphony," Lisa observed, reviewing footage. "Different interpretations, but the same underlying melody." Sarah coordinated the logistics for Wei's journey to Los Angeles, working with medical professionals to prepare for various scenarios. "We need to be ready for any state of mind she might be in," she explained during a production meeting. "The doctors say emotional reunions can trigger either extreme clarity or deeper confusion." The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Marcus. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked David during one of their late-night calls. "Bringing them together after so long?" "Sometimes the right thing isn't about guaranteed outcomes," David replied, his voice crackling over the international line. "It's about giving people the chance they deserve." As they packed up the Shanghai footage, Wei presented Marcus with a surprise, a small red notebook his father had kept, documenting the years after his mother's departure. "He wrote down everything," Wei explained. "Every achievement, every milestone, every moment he thought she would want to know about. He believed that someday, somehow, she would need to know her choice had not been in vain." The notebook became a crucial element in their storytelling. Mike, the sound designer, suggested recording Wei reading his father's entries, creating an audio bridge between past and present, Shanghai and Los Angeles, loss and reunion. On their last night in Shanghai, Wei took the crew to the dock where his mother had departed. The modern port bore little resemblance to the 1960s photograph, but Wei walked directly to a specific spot, his steps sure. "I stood here," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "Father lifted me onto his shoulders so I could see her for as long as possible." The red jacket was like a flame moving through the crowd, getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Lisa captured the moment in a single unbroken shot, Wei standing in the exact spot, the modern city glittering behind him, as he pulled out his preserved toy soldier and held it up to the night sky. "All these years," he said, "I've been having a conversation with her in my head. Now, finally, we can speak face to face, even if the words might not always find their way through the fog in her mind." The flight back to Los Angeles carried precious cargo, not just the footage and documents, but the weight of 50 years of separation about to be bridged. Marcus spent the hours reviewing their Shanghai material, seeing his grandmother's story, with new eyes. "Look at this," he showed Sarah, pointing to a sequence where Wei taught his university students. The same hand gestures she uses when telling stories, the same way of leaning forward to make a point. How can muscle memory survive half a century of separation? "Some connections," Sarah replied, "exist beyond memory. They're written into who we are." As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Marcus received a text from the memory care facility. "She's been very clear today. Keeps saying she needs to prepare for Wei's arrival. She's wearing the red jacket." The morning of the reunion dawned clear and bright in Los Angeles. Marcus arrived at the memory care facility early, finding his grandmother already dressed in her red jacket, sitting with perfect posture in her favorite chair. "Is he really coming?" she asked in Mandarin, her voice steadier than it had been in months. "Yes, Ma, Wei will be here soon." The facility had transformed their community room into a filming space under Lisa's direction. Soft lighting, carefully positioned cameras, and strategically placed microphones would capture every moment of the reunion, yet remain unobtrusive enough not to overwhelm either participant. "Remember," Dr. Patterson, the facility's head physician, cautioned the crew, "we need to be prepared for any reaction. Emotional triggers can cause unexpected responses in dementia patients." Eastwood arrived unexpectedly, taking a seat in the corner. "Some moments," he said quietly to Marcus, "you need to witness in person." The production team worked with focused precision, everyone understanding the gravity of what they were about to film. Sarah coordinated with the airport team bringing Wei from his hotel, while Tom Wheeler personally oversaw security to ensure complete privacy. 10 minutes out," Sarah announced, checking her phone. "Wei says he's ready." Marcus knelt beside his grandmother. "Ma, do you remember what we talked about Wei coming to see you?" She touched her jacket sleeve. "I wore this the day I left him. His father said it was the right choice, that your mother needed the American doctors. But a mother's heart never really chooses." Her clarity in this moment was startling. Marcus signaled Lisa to make sure they were capturing everything. 5 minutes, Sarah called softly. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with anticipation. Even the regular facility staff had gathered, quietly at the edges, sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. 2 minutes. Marcus's grandmother suddenly gripped his hand. "What if he hates me? What if all these years he's been carrying anger instead of love? Trust me, Ma, just wait and see." Sarah appeared in the doorway, nodding. Marcus squeezed his grandmother's hand one last time and stepped back. Lisa's cameras were rolling as we entered the room. For a moment, mother and son simply stared at each other across 50 years of separation. Wei, the distinguished professor with silver hair, saw instead the young woman in a red jacket who had kissed him goodbye. She saw both the small boy she had left behind and the man he had become, time telescoping in her mind. "Mother," Wei said, softly in Mandarin. She stood trembling. "Wei, my little Wei?" He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Not so little anymore. Your hands." She touched them wonderingly. "They're your father's hands now. He promised to take care of you." "Did he? Did he keep his promise?" "Every day," Wei assured her. "He made sure I knew you left out of love, not choice." She touched his face, tracing lines that hadn't existed when she'd last seen him. "I wrote you letters. So many letters. But I never sent them because I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't understand, afraid you'd reject me, afraid the pain would be too much." "I wrote you letters too," Wei revealed. "Every year telling you about my life, my dreams, my own children." "Children?" Her eyes widened. You have children? Wei pulled out his phone, showing her photographs. 2 daughters and a son. And 5 grandchildren. They all know about you, about your courage. She stared at the photos, her hands shaking. They have your father's eyes. And your smile when you were small. The crew filmed in reverent silence as mother and son began sharing 50 years of memories. Wei told her about his father's dedication to his education, about becoming a teacher himself, about naming his eldest daughter after her. She teaches too, he said. The strength to nurture, to guide, that came from you, even in absence. His mother listened, alternating between sharp clarity and gentle confusion. When she drifted, Wei adapted seamlessly, meeting her wherever her mind had wandered. The soldier, she said suddenly. The one you gave me for protection. I gave it to Marcus's mother when she was sick. Wei reached into his jacket and produced its twin, worn by time but carefully preserved. They protected us both, Mother. Across all the distance, across all the years. Lisa's cameras captured the moment they held the toy soldiers together. 2 pieces of a fractured history finally reuniting. Mike's sound equipment picked up their mingled tears, the soft words of forgiveness and love exchanged in whispers. As the afternoon progressed, Wei shared the red notebook his father had kept. He recorded everything, he explained. Every achievement, every milestone. He wanted you to know that your sacrifice had meaning. She ran her fingers over her late husband's handwriting. He understood. Even when I couldn't forgive myself, he understood. The reunion flowed between past and present, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion. When she drifted into memory, sometimes seeing Wei as the child he had been, he played along gently. When she returned to the present, their conversations deepened into discussions of choice, sacrifice, and the complex nature of love. I carried the weight of leaving you every day, she confessed during a moment of particular lucidity. It shaped everything. How I raised your sister, how I lived my life. The red jacket became my reminder, my penance. No more penance, Wei said firmly. The jacket can be just a jacket now. The weight can be put down. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the facility's windows, Wei shared one final surprise. He had brought recordings of the old songs she used to sing while cooking, the ones he had mentioned in Shanghai. As the familiar melody filled the room, something remarkable happened. She began to sing along, her voice clear and strong, remembering every word of songs she hadn't sung in 50 years. Wei joined her, their voices blending in a duet that bridged time and distance. The crew captured it all. The songs, the stories, the silences filled with unspoken understanding. Lisa's cameras moved discreetly, documenting not just the big moments but the small gestures, how they tilted their heads the same way when listening, how their hands moved in identical patterns when emphasizing a point, how they both blinked, back tears in the exact same manner. As the day drew to a close, Wei prepared to leave, promising to return tomorrow. His mother, tired but more peaceful than Marcus had seen her in years, held his face between her hands. My son, she said clearly. My brave, beautiful son. Thank you for growing into someone who could understand. After Wei left, Marcus sat with his grandmother as she drifted toward sleep, still wearing her red jacket. The weight, she murmured, half dreaming. Wei was right. We can put it down now. Later, reviewing the footage with Eastwood, Marcus realized they had captured something beyond their original vision. This wasn't just a story about memory and loss, immigration and sacrifice. It was about the possibility of healing, even across decades of separation. Some stories, Eastwood observed, teach us that it's never too late for redemption. Even when memory fades, love finds its way home. That evening, the production team gathered in Marcus's office to review the day's footage. The emotional weight of what they had captured was palpable in the room. There's something here that transcends the original story, Lisa observed, replaying the moment Wei and his mother sang together. It's like watching time itself heal. Sarah was already coordinating the next few days of filming. Wei would stay in Los Angeles for 2 weeks, allowing them to document the gradual rebuilding of their relationship. The memory care facility has agreed to let him visit daily, she explained. They believe this reunion might actually help stabilize her cognitive state, at least temporarily. Tom Wheeler, who had maintained a professional distance throughout the day, finally spoke up. In all my years of security work, I've never seen anything like this. The way they connected, despite everything, it makes you believe in something bigger than rules and regulations. The next morning, Wei arrived early at the facility carrying a small suitcase. Family photographs, he explained to Marcus. And something else I think you should see. Inside the suitcase were dozens of small notebooks, each filled with his father's careful handwriting. He didn't just record my achievements, Wei explained. He wrote letters to Mother too, telling her about his own journey, raising me alone, keeping her memory alive, understanding her choice more deeply as the years passed. Marcus called the team immediately. This was another layer of the story they hadn't anticipated. 3 parallel narratives of love and loss, written in unsent letters across half a century. When Wei's mother awoke that morning, she was initially confused, but the sight of her son brought immediate recognition. "You're really here," she said, touching his face. "I thought perhaps I had dreamed it." They spent the morning going through the photographs together. Each image triggered stories, some clear and detailed, others fragmented but emotionally rich. Wei's father emerged as a central figure in these narratives, the man who had helped both mother and son survive their separation with grace and understanding. He never remarried, Wei told her. Said his heart was split between 2 places, the son he was raising and the woman who had made the bravest choice he'd ever witnessed. Lisa captured the subtle play of emotions across both their faces as they discovered how their parallel lives had been unknowingly connected by this man's quiet devotion. During lunch, Wei's mother had a moment of particular clarity. "I remember now," she said suddenly, "the exact moment I knew I had to leave. The doctor said your sister needed American medicine, treatment that didn't exist in China. Your father looked at me and said, 'Sometimes love means choosing the impossible.' I didn't understand then. I do now." The afternoon brought another surprise. Wei had arranged a video call with his children and grandchildren in Shanghai. The facility's community room filled with voices speaking a mixture of Mandarin and English, generations reaching across oceans to connect. Marcus's grandmother watched in wonder as her grandchildren and great-grandchildren introduced themselves, each one showing something they had inherited from her, a gesture, a smile, a way of laughing. The youngest, a 5-year-old girl, sang one of the old songs Wei had remembered. "Your father was right," she told Wei as the call ended. "Love does mean choosing the impossible sometimes, but it also means the impossible can lead to moments like this." As evening approached, Wei shared one final treasure, a small piece of red fabric, carefully preserved. "When you left," he explained, "I cut a small square from your jacket's lining. Kept it all these years, my own piece of you to hold on to." His mother touched the fabric, then touched her own jacket. "All this time," she said softly, "we were both holding on to pieces of the same memory." The crew filmed until darkness fell, capturing these moments of reconnection and revelation. What had begun as a documentary about preserving memories before they faded had evolved into something far more profound, a testament to the enduring power of love across time, distance, and even the fog of failing memory. As night fell over, Los Angeles, the facility's staff made an unprecedented offer. They would allow Wei to stay overnight in a guest room near his mother's quarters. "In cases like this," Dr. Patterson explained, "maintaining the connection once it's reestablished can be crucial for cognitive stability." We sat with his mother as she prepared for sleep, their conversation flowing naturally between past and present. The cameras continued rolling, capturing intimate moments that spoke volumes about their reconnection. "Tell me about your children, again," she requested, her voice tired but eager. "I want to remember every detail." Wei described each of his children. Minghua, the eldest daughter named after her, now a professor like himself. Li Wei, his son who had become a doctor. and May, his youngest, who taught music to elementary school children. As he spoke, his mother closed her eyes, creating mental pictures of the family she had never known. "They all have your determination," Wei said softly. "That fire inside that makes you keep going, keep trying, no matter what. Father always said, that was your greatest gift to me." The night staff moved quietly around them, understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary. Lisa kept a single camera running discreetly, capturing the natural interactions between mother and son. Around midnight, Wei's mother began to drift between sleep and wakefulness, her words becoming a mixture of memories. "The boat," she murmured. "It was so cold. I kept thinking about your warm hands, how they felt the last time I held them." Wei held her hands now, warming them between his own. "I'm here now, Mother. We both made it through that cold." Sarah, who had stayed to coordinate the overnight filming, whispered to Marcus, "This is beyond anything we could have scripted, the way they found their own language of reconciliation." The next morning brought another dimension to their story. Wei's mother woke with remarkable clarity, asking for paper and pen. "I need to write something," she insisted, "while I can remember." For the next hour she wrote steadily, Wei sitting quietly beside her. When she finished, she handed the pages to her son. "This is what I couldn't say yesterday, what I've needed to say for 50 years. Wei read aloud, his voice steady despite his emotions. "My dearest son, there were two paths before me, and both led through darkness. I chose the one that would save your sister's life, but it meant leaving half my heart behind. Your father promised me you would understand someday. He said children grow into their own wisdom, and love finds ways to bridge even the widest rivers. He was right. You sit beside me now, and in your eyes, I see not judgment, but understanding. The weight I've carried all these years, you've helped me set it down. The red jacket can finally rest." The production team worked in shifts throughout the day, documenting this continued unfolding of healing. Tom Wheeler, who stopped by to check on permissions for additional filming days, found himself staying to watch. "You know," he said to Marcus, during a quiet moment, "when I first caught you filming after hours, I thought I was just doing my job, protecting the studio's interests. Now I realize some stories need to break the rules to be told properly." As evening approached again, Wei shared another surprise. He had brought traditional Chinese herbs and cooking implements, asking permission to prepare dinner for his mother in the facility's kitchen. "She taught me to cook," he explained to the crew. "In those few years we had together, every dish has a memory attached to it." The simple act of cooking together became another bridge between them. His mother sat at the kitchen counter, offering advice and criticism in equal measure, momentarily free from confusion as muscle memory took over. "More ginger," she instructed. "You always were too cautious with the spices." Wei smiled, adding more ginger to the soup. "Some things never change." The facility staff watched in amazement as their usually quiet resident came alive, sharing stories about each dish, correcting Wei's technique, tasting and adjusting seasonings. Lisa's cameras captured it all, the steam rising from the pots, the precise movements of their hands, the shared glances of understanding. "Food is memory," Wei explained to Marcus as they cooked. "These dishes carry the taste of home, of times before separation. In preparing them together, we recreate not just flavors but moments we thought were lost forever." 6 months later, Marcus sat in Eastwood's private screening room, watching the final cut of their documentary. The legendary director had insisted on viewing it alone with him first, before the studio executives and test audiences would see it. The film opened with a simple shot: his grandmother's red jacket hanging in a shaft of morning light, followed by Wei's voice reading from his father's notebooks. "Some stories," he began, "are written not in words but in the spaces between heartbeats, in the silences between continents, in the years between goodbye and hello." As the documentary unfolded, Marcus watched their months of work weave together into something more profound than he'd imagined. The parallel narratives of mother and son, separated by oceans but connected by love, flowed seamlessly between past and present. The historical recreations in Chinatown merged with actual footage from Shanghai. The guerrilla-style shots he'd captured during his maintenance days provided an intimate counterpoint to the more polished studio sequences. But it was the reunion footage that formed the emotional core of the film. "Stop," Eastwood said suddenly, pausing on a frame showing mother and son sharing a quiet moment in the facility's garden. "This is what makes it work. Not the big moments, but these small ones. The way they mirror each other without realizing it." The months following the reunion had brought unexpected developments. Wei had arranged a sabbatical from his university, staying in Los Angeles to spend time with his mother. The memory care facility had noticed remarkable improvements in her cognitive state. Not a cure, but moments of clarity became more frequent, more sustained. "The mind is mysterious," Dr. Patterson had explained. "But emotional connections can create pathways through the fog of dementia. Your grandmother's brain is literally rebuilding neural connections through these interactions." The documentary captured this gradual transformation. Scenes showed Wei and his mother establishing new routines: morning Tai Chi in the facility's garden, cooking sessions in the kitchen, afternoon storytelling where they pieced together their separate histories. "Look at this sequence," Eastwood pointed as the film continued. It showed Wei's children arriving from Shanghai, meeting their grandmother for the first time. The camera caught the moment his youngest daughter, May, sat at the facility's piano and began playing one of the old songs her father had learned from his mother. The music unlocked something, Marcus narrated in the film. Suddenly, 3 generations were singing together, the melody carrying memories that words couldn't express. The documentary didn't shy away from difficult moments. There were days when confusion returned, when his grandmother couldn't recognize Wei, or became trapped in memories of the departure. But even these scenes carried a message of hope. Wei's patient presence, his ability to meet her wherever her mind had wandered, showed how love could transcend the barriers of time and illness. Tom Wheeler appeared in the film briefly, describing how he'd discovered Marcus's midnight filming. "Sometimes," he admitted on camera, "rules exist to be challenged. This story needed to break through barriers to be told." The scenes shot in Shanghai provided crucial context, showing how Wei's life had developed in parallel with his mother's American journey. The university where he taught, the home he had built, the family he had raised, all carried echoes of her influence. "Your mother's strength," Wei's wife explained in an interview, "shaped our family without us ever meeting her." The way Wei approached parenthood, his dedication to education, his belief in sacrifice for the greater good, these were her lessons, passed down through absence. The film's most powerful sequences came from the quiet moments. Wei reading his father's notebooks to his mother, their shared meals in the facility's kitchen, the gradual unpacking of 50 years of unspoken words. "The red jacket," his grandmother said in one scene, "was my armor. As long as I wore it, I could pretend the pain was outside me." But seeing Wei again, hearing his story, now it can just be a jacket again. The pain doesn't need a place to live anymore. As the documentary approached its conclusion, it showed a ceremony held in the facility's garden. Wei's entire family had gathered, his children, grandchildren, even some of his colleagues from Shanghai. His mother, having one of her clearest days, stood before them in her red jacket. "Today," she announced in strong Mandarin, "we put down the weight." She removed the jacket, holding it out to her great-granddaughter, Wei's youngest grandchild. "This is no longer a symbol of separation. Now it can be just a beautiful memory, passed down with love instead of pain." The final scenes showed the family together, 3 generations spanning 2 continents, sharing stories and songs. The red jacket hung in the background, transformed from a burden into a bridge between past and present. "Stop it there," Eastwood said as the credits began to roll. He sat in silence for a moment before speaking. "You know what you've made here? Not just a documentary about memory or immigration. You've made a film about redemption, about how it's never too late to heal old wounds, never too late to find your way home." Marcus thought about his journey, from midnight janitor with borrowed equipment to director of a studio documentary. But more than that, he thought about the deeper story they'd uncovered. "We started out trying to preserve my grandmother's memories before they faded," he said. "Instead, we found something more valuable. The way love persists even when memories don't." The impact of the film extended beyond their original expectations. Medical researchers became interested in studying how the reunion had affected his grandmother's cognitive function. Immigration advocacy groups saw it as a powerful statement about family separation and reunion. But most importantly, it sparked conversations about memory, forgiveness, and the possibility of healing across time. Wei continued his sabbatical, splitting his time between teaching remote classes and being with his mother. The memory care facility created a special program for families dealing with dementia, inspired by the ways Wei had learned to connect with his mother through shared activities and patience. The red jacket, now framed in a special display case, in the facility's common room became a symbol of transformation, how the weight of the past could be transformed into hope for the future. "There's one more thing you should see," Sarah said after the screening, handing Marcus a tablet. She had compiled reactions from test audiences, but one comment stood out. It was from another elderly resident at the facility who had watched the documentary. "I've spent years running from my own memories, thinking it was easier to let them fade. But this story showed me that even the painful ones have value. They're part of who we are, and sharing them, facing them, that's how we finally set them free." Marcus's grandmother continued to have good days and difficult ones. But the connection with Wei remained strong. On her clear days, she helped the facility staff counsel other residents and their families, showing how to navigate the complex landscape of memory and loss. The documentary's premiere was held in the facility's garden, screens set up so residents could watch from their rooms if needed. Wei's family attended via video link from Shanghai, making it a truly international event. As Marcus watched his grandmother that evening, sitting between Wei and him, her face illuminated by the screen, he realized they had captured something timeless. The power of love to transcend separation, the ability of truth to heal old wounds, and the way stories properly told could light the way home. "You know what this really is?" Eastwood said to Marcus as they watched the audience react. "It's a love letter, to memory, to family, to the courage it takes to face the past and choose a different future." The documentary ended up winning several awards, but its real success was measured in the lives it touched, the conversations it started, and the healing it inspired. Marcus kept his old maintenance badge in his office, a reminder that every story, no matter how hidden, deserves to be told. And in the memory care facility's garden, where Wei still practiced morning Tai Chi with his mother, the red jacket's story continued to evolve. No longer a symbol of separation, but a testament to the enduring power of love across time, distance, and even the fading of memory itself. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, it would mean a lot.